Ilhan Omar, of all people, has a remarkable observation about this nation that welcomed her with open arms. She thinks we're becoming the worst country in the world. And the reason? Well, it'll make you mad. So we want to show it to you so we can laugh at her. Let's turn to the deportation regime of the Trump presidency. He ran on the idea of mass deportations. He always said that he would start with the criminals first. But ultimately, if you're in this country illegally, you should get out. Self-deport. In fact, they put together a great plan for you to leave. If you don't, you'll be deported. And we're seeing that play out right now. But earlier this week, or a few days ago, I should say, the president did make an announcement that surprised a lot of people. It had to do with a certain sector of illegal immigrants in this country with certain jobs. Take a look. He put this on social media. It said, our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good longtime workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming. So the signal that was sent was that the hotel leisure industry and the agriculture industry was going to get a pass right now on any sort of raids and deportations. And a lot of people are like, well, what are you doing? People are breaking the law, they're breaking the law. And if these businesses, by the way, are employing illegal immigrants to exploit their cheap labor, well, those businesses should be punished. You're not allowed to hire somebody if they don't have documentation. And if they're providing you with fake documentation, well, then when you fill out your I-9 and they're engaging in identity theft, well, that's a crime too. It's another reason why people should be deported, and this should end right now. And when I say some people, I mean me and a lot of other people observing this whole thing. Somebody got in Trump's ear and said, listen, you're going to devastate the agriculture industries. You're going to do this. You're going to do that, which is the same stuff we've been hearing from the left all the time. Who's going to pick your strawberries? We like our cheap labor. We like exploiting people. They're Democrats. That's what they do. All right. So that caused a lot of confusion, and people were not quite sure exactly why President Trump made that decision and made that announcement. And before you get too concerned about it, as of this morning, he reversed that policy. Washington Post wrote it up and said Trump officials reverse guidance exempting farms, hotels, and immigration raids. ICE agents have been told to continue conducting enforcement operations at agricultural businesses despite concerns about negative effects on the food industry. By the way, what does that mean, that it's impossible to replace these jobs? And by the way, the one other thing, the agriculture industry has a guest farm worker visa exemption. It's been in existence since the 50s. If big agriculture needs to import cheap labor from other countries to pick fruits and vegetables, you've already got your carve out. The problem is people come in here, they get those jobs that are supposed to be temporary seasonal employment, they overstay. And those farms or big ag industry farms, they take advantage and they exploit those people knowing that they've overstayed their temporary visa. That's the problem. And that undermines our economy and undermines jobs. By the way, this announcement was met with derision and sarcasm and criticism from one Gavin Newsom, a governor who benefits from all this illegal activity. He said, looks like Stephen Miller is the boss after all. Trump got bigfooted by his own staff. Pathetic. I love it how Gavin Newsom tries to be the tough guy and pick fights with Donald Trump. But of course, his argument makes no logical sense if you're observing all the things that we've been hearing from the left over the course of this presidency. As the great Maze Moore on X pointed out, oh, so Trump got bigfooted by a staff member, Stephen Miller. I guess he's not a king. What were all the No Kings rallies about if Stephen Miller's really the boss? Furthermore, Newsom is so transparent and clumsy and stupid, and he's doing exactly what the left's been trying to do for months now in this presidency, and that's sow division. They think that Trump is a child. They think that he's got a fragile ego. They think he's a narcissist. They think he's a megalomaniac. They tried to divide him and Elon Musk. I mean, Elon sort of blew that up on his own, but they tried to oh, Trump's not the president, Elon Musk is, right? Remember all of that? And yet we're having a No Kings rally, right? Now, Stephen Miller is really in charge. It's like they do this all the time, and they try to create these divisions, and now they're trying to divide Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, and it doesn't work, but they'll keep doing it anyway. The fact of the matter is, our federal law enforcement officers charged with enforcing our immigration and customs laws are doing a great job. They're finding a lot of really bad people. They're apprehending them against all odds and without the help of local law enforcement in certain blue cities across this country. They're still doing an effective job. They're still apprehending bad guys. Here's a report out this week from John Lott at the Crime Statistics Center, I think is what it's called. John Lott, great researcher. And he shows that our murder rate in the United States of America is about to hit its lowest number in almost 20 years. Why could that be? Well, first of all, there's a renewed emphasis on law and order in general and allowing law enforcement to enforce the law, number one. Number two, these ICE raids are getting rid of murderers. But also, if you're a criminal in this country illegally, you're probably keeping your head down right now. You're probably not feeling super emboldened right now. So you're not engaging in the kind of hardcore criminal activity that might lead to murder because you don't want to be on anybody's radar lest you get deported back to your hole of a country. All of these things factored together is giving us the lowest murder rate in America in close to 2 decades. It's phenomenal. The fact of the matter is things slowly but surely are already getting reset in this country because all it took was a new president, a new attorney general, a new FBI director, and a new approach to actually enforcing our laws. And if you're against that, you're against law and order, you're against Western civilization, and you're against American ideals of truth and justice. In other words, you're Ilhan Omar. I can't even describe what you're about to hear from this woman. This ungrateful, despicable, America-hating woman who calls herself a congresswoman. But I'll just let you hear it unfold before your very ears.
To be coming out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights, while our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade. It is really shocking, and it should be a wake-up call for all Americans to say this is not the country we were born in. This is not the country we believe in. This is not the country our founding fathers imagined. And this is not the country that is supported by our Constitution, our ideals, our values. And we should all collectively be out in the streets rejecting what is taking place this week.
All right. Observation. I assure you our founders did never envision a woman with a foreign accent wearing a turban calling herself a congressperson lecturing us about what's American and what's not. You're right there. They never envisioned that. Did she just say this is not the country we were born in? No, this is not the country you were born in. I do love foreign-born individuals who, yes, admittedly now are U.S. citizens, but immediately start lecturing me about what it is to be American. What makes America America. The lack of humility and grace and gratitude from this woman. But I do want to just review one thing in case you missed it.
Be coming out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy.
Have a democracy. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to point out, but it just, fingernails on the chalkboard.
A beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where
we're one of the worst countries, says Ilhan Omar. We're one of the worst countries. America is one of the worst countries. That's what Ilhan Omar said. We're one of the worst countries. She speaks for the Democrats. Democrats will not chide her. Democrats will not criticize her. Democrats will invite her to participate in a fundraiser because she raises money, because the base of the Democrat Party agree with her. We're becoming one of the worst countries, she says. She, of course, is from Somalia. So this refugee immigrant who was welcomed here with open arms by this United States of America, she is now calling America one of the worst countries. We should probably check in on Somalia. How are things looking in Somalia? America is one of the worst countries, says Ilhan Omar. Somalia, on the other hand, well, I mean, I will admit this. There are no uniformed soldiers on the streets. I mean, there are no streets either. For all I know, that could be a uniform. Is that a uniform? No, that's donated clothes from American Christian charities, probably. I mean, there are similarities to certain parts of Los Angeles, actually. And I'm sure the smell is the same too. But, that's not fair. She was making a point about the military, right? So what's going on with the Somalian military? I'll just pull a random headline from the last couple of days. 4 African Union soldiers killed in Somalia near Mogadishu. At least 4 African Union soldiers from Uganda were killed and 5 others wounded in an ambush attack in Lower Shabelle region. The attack carried out by al-Shabaab militants took place near Afgoye town, about 30 kilometers southwest of the capital. But America is becoming one of the worst countries compared to Somalia, says Ilhan Omar. Well, if you think that kind of rhetoric and that kind of criticism and that kind of hyperbole and the kind of mess created by Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass in Los Angeles is in some way going to make President Trump rethink or tone down his approach to the mass deportations that he literally promised during the presidential election, you would be wrong. Yesterday, he put out this encyclopedia-sized post on Truth Social. Let's go through it together, shall we? Our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. That is literally what he said at his rallies. That is literally what he said on the campaign trail. It's literally what was on his website. It was literally what was in every flyer printed by the campaign. It is literally what he promised during the debates. And it is literally what he said during his acceptance speech and victory speech when he won the election, when he won every single swing state up for grabs. You may not like it, but when people say, did you vote for this? Literally, yes. This is exactly what people voted for because this is exactly what he promised. And if you're angry about mass deportations, be angry at Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Alejandro Mayorkas, who completely this country with a wide open border. First time it's ever happened in modern American history. Even Obama said that he couldn't keep the border open. Even Obama acknowledged that he had to deport people. All right. Back to the president. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE are subjected to violence, harassment, and even threats from radical Democrat politicians, but nothing will stop us from executing our mission and fulfilling our mandate to the American people. ICE officers are herewith ordered by notice of this truth to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history. In order to achieve this, we must expand our efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside. These are These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. I'll pause there. Let me be clear on a part of the cheating factor that Democrats utilize illegal aliens for that gets overlooked way too often, but it needs to be emphasized here. We have a thing in America called the census. We do census, generally speaking, every 10 to 20 years. It's in the Constitution. You have to do a census. Why do you do a census? Because it helps determine the population of the country. It helps determine the population of each state, and it also helps determine the populations per congressional district. If the population of one state is bigger than it was 10 years ago, then you change the congressional apportionment, because congressional districts are based on population, right? And the most populous state, California, has the most congressional districts, and the smallest populated states like Wyoming and Montana, they just have one congressional district for the whole state. If you have more people, it means you have more congressional districts, right? Right. And those congressional districts, well, that allows you to have more members of the House of Representatives representing your state in the House of Representatives in Congress. Also, don't forget that the Electoral College that determines who's the president of the United States, that's based on each state's congressional districts too. So in other words, if California, for instance, has 50 congressional districts, they get 52 votes in the Electoral College because your 2 senators get a vote as well. That's how we determine how many votes each state has in the Electoral College. So if your state has a ton of congressional districts, it means you have more influence in the presidential election at the Electoral College. Now, in recent years, people have been leaving states like New York and Illinois and California and moving to states like Texas and Tennessee and Florida. They're moving from blue states and they're moving to red states. That means, simple math, those red states are going to have more influence in the presidential election next time around. But here's the rub. During the last 4 years, as you know, we had open borders, and we had 20 million people, it's estimated, come into this country illegally. And unlike years past, did you notice a change? Did you notice how the Biden administration was deliberately flying people from the border to places like New York and Chicago or Los Angeles or San Francisco? Did you notice that? Or Maryland, for that matter, or Virginia in the DC area? Oh, yeah. They were flying them in, they were busing them in, they were transporting them in all around the country. Now, ostensibly, this was because these illegal immigrants claimed that they had family members in those areas. Could be true, could not be true. We're not sure. But a whole lot of those people did not stay in those red states of Florida or Texas or Louisiana. They went into blue states. Why? What would be the point, right? Why would they do that? Well, because if the population was fleeing those states because of the horrific policies of the Democrat governors and going to red states, they were losing their clout in the Electoral College and in the House of Representatives. They were losing congressional districts. Now that you've got all those illegal immigrants in those blue cities and in those blue states, you keep your congressional districts. Wait, what? You're probably thinking to yourself, no, Larry, you got that wrong, because they're just illegal immigrants that have moved there. They're not U.S. citizens, and you only count U.S. citizens for congressional districts of the Electoral College. That's not true. Wish it were, should be. But sadly, our founders weren't actually that specific in the Constitution when they figured out how we would determine congressional districts. They just used the word persons, not citizens, persons. So as new people move into those states, they are counted, regardless of their immigration status, whether they are citizens, whether they are legal immigrants with green cards, or whether they are illegal immigrants. If they live there, they are counted. Suddenly, these blue states, they have a rejuvenation of humanity in their cities, in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles. And the next thing you know, they're going to have to get more congressional districts. And the next thing you know, their Electoral College clout is retained. Now, I'm not saying Democrats have done this on purpose and that it's a grand conspiracy and it's a big plan and they did this knowing exactly what was going to happen all along. No. I'm not saying they're that smart or maniacal, and I'm not saying this is a great replacement theory or anything crazy racist like that, because you're racist if you think things like that, I'm told. No. I'm just saying, hey, it's just, stuff happens and it's incredibly coincidental and certainly benefits all of those same people who are screaming right now about how they demand all of these people are left alone and allowed to stay illegally. It just seems to benefit Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom and their political party to have all those illegal immigrants in their states and in their cities. It certainly benefits them politically in the long run, doesn't it? Add to that, if people do end up voting illegally, well, that certainly goes a long way for them as well. Just a side note, wanted to take you down that path so you had some more information as we discuss this issue. Should we get back to the president? Sure, let's do that. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. These radical left Democrats are sick of mind, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities, and they're doing a good job of it. There is something wrong with them. That's why they believe in open borders, transgender for everybody, and men playing in women's sports. And that's why I want ICE, Border Patrol, and our great patriotic law enforcement officers to focus on our crime-ridden and deadly inner cities and those places where sanctuary cities play such a big role. You don't hear about sanctuary cities in our heartland. I want our brave ICE officers to know that real Americans are cheering you on every day. That's true. The American people want our cities, schools, and communities to be safe and free of illegal alien crime, conflict, and chaos. That's why I've directed my entire administration to put every resource possible behind this effort and reverse the tide of mass destruction, migration that has turned once idyllic towns into scenes of third world dystopia. Our federal government will continue to be focused on the re-migration of aliens to the places from where they came and preventing the admission of anyone who undermines the domestic tranquility of the United States. To ICE, FBI, DEA, ATF, the Patriots at Pentagon, and the State Department, you have my unwavering support. Now go get the job done. Signed, DJT. So, Trump is doubling down on the mass deportation protocols and demanding that it be expanded to Chicago, New York, and other high populous blue cities that have been providing sanctuary policies to keep illegal immigrants. And it is mostly in blue cities in blue states. We have blue cities in other states, but you notice it doesn't happen in Dallas or in Houston or in some of these other states that end up voting Republican. Why? Because, well, they don't want a bunch of illegal immigrants there necessarily, because that helps those states with regard to the Electoral College. Keep in mind that these congressional districts are a big part of this. Gavin Newsom, no surprise, didn't like the president's statement that I just read to you. He said his plan is clear: incite violence and chaos in blue states, have an excuse to militarize our cities, demonize his opponents, keep breaking the law, and consolidate power. It's illegal, and we will not let it stand. Think about that for a minute. Gavin Newsom is saying that literally enforcing our laws, our current federal immigration laws, is illegal. Gavin Newsom and the state of California are not allowed to have their own immigration laws. They've got to follow our laws. That's just the way it goes when it comes to border security and immigration. But think about it for a minute. He wants to incite violence and chaos in blue states because the president is enforcing the law. That incites violence. He's encouraging that. He's rooting it on. He's hoping for it. If Gavin Newsom was concerned about violence, then he would be working with the federal government to actually get this job done in a more sane, rational, nonviolent, orderly way, but he doesn't. In fact, he creates barriers for order. He creates barriers for nonviolent deportation. He's standing and locking arms with the violent mobs on the streets, resisting law enforcement from enforcing our very laws. That's Gavin Newsom. Meanwhile, a real upside of the president's robust policies over the course of the last 5 months since he took office. Check out this from the New York Post. Nearly 1 million illegal immigrants have self-deported. That leads to higher wages, by the way, as well. Don't forget, the more people who leave the country who are currently undermining wages and employment opportunities in America by being exploited for low wage work, well, that means that the people who are here getting the jobs legally can demand higher wages because they're not in fear of being exploited or deported. That's how basic economics work. Now, you may not like that. You may not like the fact that, well, higher wages means you may have to pay more for services and goods and products. I get it. That's true. But that's why we have laws, people. You've been benefiting from lower prices for certain services and products because there have been individuals being exploited right now by circumventing the law. Charlie Kirk pointed this out and actually expand on this idea a little bit. A million illegals have already self-deported under President Trump thanks to the unapologetic shock and awe campaign of raids and border enforcement. When Dwight Eisenhower launched his deportation roundup in 1954, nearly 10 foreigners left voluntarily for each one arrested. The same pattern is holding today. Remember, mass deportations include arrests and self-removals. The plan is working. So for all the people who have been bodily and physically arrested, apprehended, and deported, you've got 1 million people now so far who have just left on their own. And that's the plan. That's the idea. Ultimately, if you enforce the laws, people are not stupid. And if they have the choice of leaving voluntarily and maybe coming back legally one day versus being deported and seen as a federal criminal and never allowed to re-enter the country legally, well, what are you going to do? Obviously. All right, one more observation coming from the military and the Pentagon. In response to President Trump's statement, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth mobilized 700 military personnel to support ICE in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. Quote from Secretary Hegseth, this is from Sean Parnell, spokesperson for the Pentagon. These service members drawn from all components and operating in a Title X duty status will provide logistical support and conduct administrative and clerical functions associated with the processing of illegal aliens at ICE detention facilities. They will not directly participate in law enforcement activities, obviously. And by the way, this is also not only what President Trump promised when he was running for office, but dirty little secret, this is exactly what Joe Biden did when he was letting all these people in the country. Remember when we had chaos at the borders and people were flooding in and it was just mass hysteria and just humanity piled up on top of each other? He deployed military personnel, not to enforce any of our immigration or border security laws, but to help with logistics so that everybody could get processed. Oh, we got to get you up to Chicago as fast as possible. Let's get more bodies down here. We got to rubber stamp all of these, all of these documents to make sure people can get in. Here's your cell phone. Here, use the app. Here's some free money. Here's some free health care. Here's some free food stamps. Get whatever you want. Takes a lot of people to be able to hand out all those goodies at the border. Biden did this on the opposite side of the equation. And now Trump is utilizing military to help the deportation process. In maintaining the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and security of the United States, the Department of Defense works alongside with the Department of Homeland Security, the lead federal agency in this critical effort. This support provides critical resources to support ICE's mission, freeing up law enforcement personnel to focus on law enforcement tasks and missions. The department remains committed to securing 100% operational control of the border, which we have pretty much right now. Border crossings are down by 95%. Inflation is down. Wages are up. The Dow is up. Tariffs are fine and actually bringing money into the Treasury. And a tax cut is on the horizon. Everything is working. Everyone needs to chill out. Things are actually really good right now. And the president is making good on one of the most fundamental promises of his campaign, which is to fix the mess that we have inherited, that he has inherited from the last 4 years. And that begins with this deportation process and all of the hysteria and all of the violence and all of the criminal activity and all of the marching and all of the protests and all of the smashing windows and the threats of violence against law enforcement officials, much of that perpetrated by actual Democrats who hold elected office. None of that is making a difference. If anything, it is tightening Trump's resolve. This is going to get done come hell or high water, and we are all going to benefit for it.